All right, man, peace. So now this is going to be part 3 in the series on Kanye West and whether or not he has quote-unquote lost his mind. We've just gone through the statement that Kanye made pertaining to slavery and his attempts to expound on it in a rather clunky, inadequate way. But for those of us who actually were listening to what he was trying to put forth, we know that he was not talking about actual slavery. He was talking about mental slavery. So let's hear them continue. Of course, I'm going to chime in.
Candace has facts. She's researched, right? Candace Owens has facts. She's researched. And then...
Yes, Candace Owens is the political figure that Kanye is aligning himself with, who is a so-called conservative media pundit who Kanye West has aligned himself to. She's known for making quote-unquote inflammatory statements that allegedly alienate the so-called black community.
And Candace just pulls out her Jedi lightsaber and just, chops Ebro's head off with facts. Then Ebro FaceTimes me the next day, and he's talking about the scoop and poop. He wants to talk about music now. I said, yo, you gonna have Candace on your show? He's like, nah, I'm not. She's mean. So you're gonna stifle her voice, Ebro. You're choosing to enslave people's minds.
Well, as I've already stated, when you speak any sort of truth, it's going to cause division. And Kanye West has to understand that, but I don't think that he's at the level mentally. I don't think that he even has any form of mental stability to grasp that. Because beyond that, he can form his own radio station and give her a platform if that's truly what he wants to do. Ebro's voice and his platform is not to promote political ideologies outside of liberalism. That's the extent to which he understands politics, and that's the extent to which he's allowed to speak on politics on a hip-hop radio station. That would be career suicide for him to come on the radio and actually allow a quote-unquote black conservative pundit like Candace Owens to bring forth any type of information that may sway certain so-called black people away from liberalism. And once again, I'm not interested in the so-called dichotomy between liberalism and conservatism. As I've stated incessantly, I'm apolitical. But the so-called black people are only allowed to hear one side of the argument. And that's meant to keep them in a certain state of stasis so that our people cannot move.
You're choosing to not let the truth be free.
Can I give you my translation of what happened last week and tell me if it's right?
Okay.
The way I see it, you don't necessarily embrace the views of Donald Trump as much as you want to show people that they shouldn't be intimidated from showing their true feelings, expressing themselves freely.
But what if he does embrace the views of Donald Trump? What does that really mean? Does that mean that he's a so-called bad person because he aligns himself with Donald Trump's platforms? Harvey Levin is trying to act as if he's doing Kanye West a favor by creating a partition between Kanye West co-signing Donald Trump the person, as opposed to the implications of co-signing him as a person, that being that people will infer that Kanye West agrees with all of his ideologies. And if he does, so what? So what?
And that the hat is a lightning rod for this kind of free thought that is lost in our society because people get bullied and shouted down and they're intimidated to the point where they have to shut up. Is that fair?
It's the mob. The mob tries to tell you what to think.
Thank you, sir. I agree. That's why I call them the pro-black mafia. I've been using that phrase for well over a year now because it's pertinent. And the interesting thing about the so-called pro-black mafia is that they are almost uniformly idiotic. They have no idea where they want to go. That's why I always put the onus on them to either start the so-called race war or leave America. They will do neither one because they're professional malcontents. They have no plan. They don't have the mental ability to actually formulate a plan. Because what that would entail is them actually disciplining themselves. Our people actually like their current state because in their current state, they can blame everybody else. And I'm sure that that's going to make a lot of people upset. I really don't give a shit. Our people love to blame everyone else. And all the people that you're blaming are never going to assist you in elevating yourself because they're making too much money off of your dysfunctionality. A pimp is never going to tell a hoe, you know what, you should clean up your life. She's not going to tell her that he's making too much money. Our people are viewed as proverbial hoes in this society.
The mob tries to make all blacks be Democrats for food stamps.
I completely agree, sir. As a matter of fact, when we look at the presidential history in America, particularly in the 20th century, when you understand what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did in bringing in welfare, or what Lyndon Baines Johnson did in bringing in the Great Society, all they did was introduce societal opioids to the so-called black community. That's all they did, was get us hooked on societal heroin, what's known as government assistance. It was to keep our people from coming together and strategizing, which was already difficult enough due to the fact that we've been deculturalized. But when you also add in the societal opioids known as welfare and other government forms of assistance, it's going to be very difficult for our people to get up off of their backside, get on our feet, proverbially speaking, and build something of substance that is ours. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, how could you say that? Our people need help. Our people are not going to get help from those who are waxing fat off of our fall. And I don't understand why so many people don't grasp that. It's created an excuse-making culture amongst our own. And what it's really done is it's helped so-called black people move towards a lower level of thinking. That's why the new thing now is to totally embrace weed. And a lot of cats get mad when I talk about weed. All that does is cloud your mind. That's all it does. So-called black man must put down the weed so that he can have a clear head, so that he can be a leader. We need our people to be leaders. It's not about trying to blend in with the other races. How could you call yourself a king when you don't want to preside over everything?
It's the mob. And by the way, you're just talking to the emotion. When you get Candace, ask her, she's going to drop you the facts.
We're going to get Candace on in a bit.
The kid, if you had...
Well, Candace Owen, once again, she's a conservative media pundit who's with the Caucasian man. So that is really Kanye West's dream scenario.
The kid that stood in Tiananmen Square in front of the tank, why he did it, he might not be able to explain that. But you can't diminish that moment if I can't give you the direct explanation.
But that kid had a righteous point of view that he really believed in, and that's why he was standing in front of the tank.
Righteousness is based completely on perspective. So what Harvey Levin did is synchronous to what John Legend did in part 1 of this series, in which he talked about quote-unquote truth. And you'll oftentimes find that from the liberal side, they believe that they're speaking from a doctrinal or a moral high ground perspective, which really is just to cater to their ego.
Point of view is free thought. Now, if you want to ask me, I don't have extremely strong political opinions. You could talk to John Legend if you want some political. I've never been into politics.
Nor should you, as a so-called black man, be interested in politics. We're supposed to be apolitical in this environment. And if we are going to become involved in politics, we have to understand what that means. That means crafting a political figure almost literally from the womb, from conception. That's how far along we have to plan it, because that's what they do in the so-called Caucasian community. That's what they do in the so-called Caucasian Jewish community. They raise their political figures from childhood. Look at the Kennedys, look at the Bushes. They already know. They know what they want their children to embody when they're running for office. They know what they want their children to embody when they take office. Whenever you want power politically, your candidate has to reflect the wants and needs of the community that he comes from. Did Barack Obama do that? Absolutely not.
I just love Trump. That's my boy. It's like so many rappers. You look at a video of Snoop Dogg loving Trump, but then he get in the office and now they don't love him. Trump is one.
Because it's all an act. Snoop Dogg is an actor. He's playing a myriad of roles since he's coming to prominence. I'm a firm believer that many of these top-level rappers are government agents. That's why they take those names: Snoop Dogg, T.I., T.I.P. Who is it that he's giving a tip on? Who is it that Snoop is snooping on? And the first song that he comes out with, or at least as a guest appearance, is on the song Deep Cover for the Deep Cover soundtrack. I mean, let's be for real.
It's one of rap's favorite people, right?
But we talk about this, that before.
Why do you think that it's so easy in Hollywood for these rappers to become actors? Where is it that they're coming from? Where are they getting their acting training from? Supposedly Tupac was so hated, but the man was getting movie script after movie script.
was elected president, people in hip hop, it was an in thing to put Donald Trump in your rhyme somewhere.
And by the way, I am in hip hop, but I'm not just in hip hop. I'm a black person in the black community, but I'm not just that. I feel like one thing is people try to minimize me to artists, hip hop, black community. Yeah, I'm always gonna represent that, but I also represent the world. I represent not even the
Of course, because you're a Luciferian, you're globalist.
the future. It's the now. We're in 2018. We're in the now, bro. You know what I mean? And I represent the now, and I represent what the possibilities of.
That's his way of saying, when he says, I'm in the now, that's his way of saying that so-called black people need to move past the slavery paradigm. That's why he keeps saying that blacks are under mental slavery, and he's correct about that. He's absolutely correct. And it starts with the so-called black man. The so-called black man has to assume his proper role as leader. The only way that he can do that is if he stops worshiping so-called black women and stops worshiping so-called Caucasians, which is a problem that Kanye West himself has.
Of a new peaceful planet. We're at the beginning of it. You saw the North Korea, but people denounce that. And you say, you said this thing, you put this whole thing. People love to say all, every, blah, blah, blah. It's not that. It's 100 sides to every story. So if you talk about Trump, yeah, there's a laundry list of things that I don't have in front of me that my friends would text me or write me emails and say, he did this. Some of them Obama did too, but it wasn't, it's loud and say, wow, the room is quiet in here. The room is quiet now, so
you have their attention.
Okay, and then there's positive things, right? And that never.
There are plenty of positive things that Donald Trump has done since he's been in office. I keep mentioning, number one, he stopped funding them whore pills that many of these so-called liberal females take to cover up for their indiscretions. He also stopped the transgenders from being able to join the military. Those are two great things that he did, and people who don't like that, you can kick rocks.
It comes out, that's when they refer to fake news, because it can be skewed and stuff. It's like the media and the liberals and the echo chamber and all that.
I like that. See, he mentioned the liberals. That's good. See, Kanye, he's just bugged out. Most likely high on some type of prescription drugs, but he's never really been taught anything, but he's searching for the truth. I doubt he's ever going to find it because of all his layers of programming, but he's trying. Unfortunately for him, the so-called black community is comprised mostly of an extremely judgmental, two-dimensional thought process base of people who like to castigate anything or anyone who comes against their liberal leanings and their liberal training.
That is having the most sore loss of all time. Like that, we're going to just keep putting out. It's like torture porn. We're going to keep showing you negative.
I completely agree. It's very obvious that the mainstream media cannot get over the fact that Donald Trump is in the White House. It's like a shock. Because the previous 8 years of President Obama were basically the glorification of the feminine principle, homosexuality, and transgenderism. That's why I stated that when Donald Trump came into the White House, he set those movements back because they felt like they were steamrolling.
When these are human beings, even like with George Bush, people said, don't apologize. I'm like, wait a second, I just saw George Bush pushing George Bush Sr. in a wheelchair, and he just lost his wife. Do you know how bad I would want to go to George Bush and say, I'm sorry for hurting you. I was an artist, I was hurting.
And he'd look at you and say, who the fuck are you?
I went up to the telethon. I said something in the moment, but when I look at you as a dad and a family member, I'm sorry for hurting you. Think about Obama.
Well, you said something in the moment, but you were prompted to say it because it was very clear that was part of your programming. You were blinking like somebody had put some Visine in your eyes when you made that statement, Kanye West. So it was very clear to me that that was some type of MK programming, that you were told to make those statements to be inflammatory, and that was going to be your introduction as an agent of chaos into the mainstream.
Obama was the opioid to our pain.
Absolutely agree with you, sir.
He pacified us, but he pissed the Nazis off even more. Hold on, bro. I'm on a wave right here. Okay. Right. You talk every day. All right. This is with the love. Give me a hug. I don't mean, but come on.
It's all good.
Let genius be free. So, we're going to go and talk. I want to talk to the guys in Charlottesville on both sides.
They don't want to talk to you, sir. And Once again, this is where Kanye West shows that his true yearning is to get that hug. And a lot of you brothers are going to start to see it after a while, that that's really what the masses of our people want from the Caucasian. They talk about race all the time because they look at the Caucasian as their daddy figure. They need his love, his validation. The justification that most of our people have to keep breathing is that one day they're going to get love from the Caucasian man. Okay, so now I've jumped ahead in this interview because Kanye was basically meandering on. This portion of the interview is relevant because he's going to make some statements pertaining to Scientology. He's going to try to defend that quote-unquote religion. Why is that? Because as I've stated, his father is an instructor in Scientology. So let's see what goes on here.
I was gonna stand on this chair right now, right? You know why I'm not standing on the chair right now? Do you all remember an Oprah Winfrey moment? Mm-hmm. What do y'all remember, Oprah Winfrey? Who's that? Tom Cruise. He was in love, right? He jumped on the couch, and what happened? Now he's crazy. So because of that, I'm not gonna hop on my coffee table.
So basically, Kanye West, what you're stating is that you're in the early stages of a mental breakdown. Because as he admitted earlier on in this interview, they're already controlling him with opioids. He stated that at one point he was taking 7 opioid tablets a day. This is how they get them hooked. First, they build them up, give them a great deal of fame and prestige, and then systematically tell them that they're going crazy because of how they conduct themselves. They did the same thing to Prince, Michael Jackson, etc. And they're in the process of doing it to Mr. Kanye West. They also did it to Whitney Houston.
He's also a Scientologist.
Does that, okay, that makes him crazy?
Crazy a little bit.
Okay, so you're more crazy to be a Scientologist. So Scientology is a lesser religion than any other religion, right?
They believe in aliens.
Wait a second. Scientology is a lesser religion than any other religion. That's what you're saying?
It's not believable and it's not a religion.
So what's a religion?
Well, they're not classified as a religion.
And what's the reason for that?
Financial gain?
Oh, they don't have as much money as the church.
Yeah, you're going to lose this one, Carly. You're going to lose this one.
Yeah, she's going to lose because Kanye West is a master troll. Once he gets you to define what a religion is, anything can be a religion.
I think we've gotten a little off.
Okay, so
No, hold on. No, what is it? We haven't. We're on now. We're on now. You remember I gave the. How many people are feeling? How many people felt something that I said today? Raise a hand if you felt something that I said today. Do you feel that I'm feeling? Do you feel that I'm being free and I'm thinking free?
Yes.
I actually don't think you're thinking anything. I think what you're doing right now is actually the absence of thought. And the reason why I feel like that is because...
My man Van Lathan stepped up looking like he's doing a freestyle. He started bobbing back and forth like he's freestyling.
Because Kanye, you're entitled to your opinion. You're entitled to believe whatever you want. But there is fact and real world, real life consequence behind everything that you just said. And while you are making music and being an artist and living the life that you've earned by being a genius, the rest of us in society have to deal with these threats to our lives. We have to deal with the marginalization that has come from the 400 years of slavery that you said for our people was a choice.
Now, do you see how emotionally unstable Van Lathan is becoming because Kanye West questioned the slave narrative? Our people have a great deal of emotional attachment to the slave narrative. They have to play the victim role, because if they don't play the victim role, they're not going to be able to continue that bond with the Caucasian. Our people are scared of letting go the bond with the Caucasian. I'm sure certain brothers are going to say, how could you say that? How could you say that so-called blacks are playing the victim role after what was done in this society? Brothers, what was done is done. That's why I provide options. You're either going to start the race war or you're going to leave. You cannot expect the Caucasian to change, especially when the slave narrative was concocted to be beneficial for them and detrimental for us. Why would they change something that's built to benefit them? So the entity that has to change is the so-called black quote-unquote community. Our people have to let go of that slave narrative. They have to let go of the victim mentality. so that they can let go of the hope and dream that one day the so-called Caucasian will love them and accept them. That's the sequence. We have to learn to define ourselves. And that's the reason why he's so angry and frustrated. Because Kanye West literally did not quite say what he's alleging Kanye stated. And if you listen to what he stated, Kanye specifies it. Now, he did it in a very awkward way. But this is why I like to delve into the psychoses of the liberal black. They rage like dogs against anyone who refutes the narrative of slavery, because they need it to exist so that they can continue to guilt trip the Caucasian into liking them and accepting them because they don't like their damn self.
Every day we have to walk into that truth while you choose to say things that, to be honest with you, dog, are nonsensical. You want to think freely? That's fine. I'll combat your free thought with my free thought, because mine is grounded in a reality that I have been given and a reality that I'm going to change, but I'm not going to do it by pretending that the enemies are on the same team as me. And frankly, I'm disappointed.
Well, Van Lathan, you have to specify who the enemies are. If you believe that the enemies are so-called white people, then, bro, we have to do something about that, starting with you. If you feel like the enemy is a so-called white man, then you have to go to a society that's dominated by so-called black people. The options are there. But liberal blacks cannot continue in this slave narrative. They cannot continue in this infatuation with getting Caucasian credibility, Caucasian validation, and then want everybody to jump on board with them. That's truly nonsensical. Kanye West, believe it or not, is actually at a higher level than Van Lathan. They're both Luciferians because they both seek justification through globalism. They want everybody to hold their hand. But Kanye is actually at a higher level of understanding than Van Lathan is.
I'm appalled, and brother, I am unbelievably hurt by the fact that you have morphed into something, to me, that's not real. That's the way I feel. Stand on all the coffee tables you want to stand on. Say whatever you want to say, but don't throw a stone, then hide your hand like the rest of us are just going to swallow it. Yay, be yay. I'm off it forever. Do you. But remember, the life that I live is as a real person.
The life that you live is as an employee of TMZ, working for the quote-unquote enemy, as you call them. Once again, so-called black man. No matter what you define yourself as or you define others as, you have to be consistent. My platform is very clear. Our people need to be self-defined. We need to have our own. We need to build our own. It starts from the ground floor. It's not going to start by going back and forth with the Caucasian, trying to play the victim role and trying to play the entity that's always being marginalized. So-called black people marginalize themselves and each other every day. I don't care about the Caucasian man. I don't care about the other races. I don't care about what they think. I don't care about how they feel about any subject. Watch that be true freedom when you stop worrying about them. You worry about yourself first and what you need to do to define yourself and be who you need to be to contribute to your own success. Have your own. Van Lathan at this point should not even be working for Harvey Levin anymore. He has enough notoriety that he could start his own website. He could start his own channel on YouTube. He could start his own internet page, whatever you want to call it. But he still wants to stay there and rant and rave about the Caucasian. Why is that?
An actual person.
Now the thing is, he said he said grounded in reality. This reality has been forced upon us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And he's talking about the so-called educational system. Van Lathan is a subscriber to the slave narrative. Once you subscribe to that our people came here and all they ever were slaves, you can never have a spirit of nobility or rulership. And you're always going to have that hanging over your head, what was done. The main thing that tore our people down during the latter part of the Middle Ages, heading into the Age of Enlightenment, was the embracing of many Luciferian ideologies and principles, which led to the fracturing of the nobility, also the decimation of the black ruling class and what's known as the bubonic plague, so on and so forth. There were a lot of reasons why our people fell from rulership in Europe. In regards to the Aboriginal blacks, the vast majority of the more prominent Aboriginal black tribes were also at war with each other here. And beyond that, they had issues dealing with a lot of the diseases that were being brought over by many of the European colonists, both black and white. So there are a lot of issues that go on historically. Like I stated, I'll cover that in other videos. But Van Lathan is hurt by his own ignorance, and I mean that in the literal sense of the term. He just does not know anything. Kanye West doesn't know anything either, but at least he knows that he's in a simulation. He's in a fabricated form of reality. Reality is subjective.
It is a choice, just like when I said slavery is a choice. The reality, we can make our own reality. We can talk about history, but not too long. We need to talk about our now, because we can fix and start loving each other now. I say we have.
I totally agree with you, Kanye West, when you state that we have to talk about our now. And a lot of so-called black people have a hard time dealing with that because they don't want to deal with the now. They want to dwell in the past based off of what they were told. Not even exactly what happened, just what they were told. And I have no problem with that. If you want to dwell on the past and you want to be angry, start the race war. I mean, what are you waiting on? Oftentimes, so-called pro-blacks, when they find out that you're a believer in the Bible, they'll say, well, you're waiting for that man to come out the sky. Okay, you have the right to that opinion. What are you waiting on? When are you going to pop up on that race war, bro? You hate the cracker, right? Like these guys that come in the comments, we're in America, KKK. The cracker, KKK. Well, when are you going to pop up on the cracker, man? Or you just going to keep talking shit all damn day? I mean, it's one or the other. Either you want to dwell on the past and you're going to do something to get some type of retribution for the past, or we're going to deal with what's going on right now.
Have no enemies. We don't have enemies. Black people have a tendency to focus and march when a white person kills a black person or wears a hat. But when it's 700 kids being killed in Chicago, it's okay. It's okay for blacks to kill blacks. But if it's a white thing...
Wait, saying that's okay.
Wait.
Let me say this very quickly, and of course that's going to be very controversial, but that is a fact. So-called black people love to march and protest of the Caucasian getting involved in killing so-called black people. Now, where he's wrong is where he states that so-called blacks believe that it's okay to hurt one another. No, that's not true. It's actually the media that decides that they're going to cover those instances differently because they cannot play up the racial angle. The real issue in regards to so-called black-on-black crime is that our people have not been taught to value themselves, value their life, because of the lack of culture. Once you restore culture and code to the so-called black community, and that starts one person at a time, and we have to breed out the undesirables. A lot of people don't understand that. We have to breed out the undesirables. So-called black men, stop complaining about how the black woman does not want you because you're not a thug. Fuck them. You go and find a woman that respects the masculine principle and you procreate with them. And there are so-called black women that will do that. There are women of the other races that will do that. Bottom line. But anyway, we're going to continue on the next part. Peace.